Hi, this is Caleb Cain, and you're watching Cain Course World History. Today we're continuing to unpack the effects of globalization in a more interconnected world.
Yeah, you remember that term that defines the greater interconnection and interaction of the world after World War II?
A globalized culture definitely brings people together, and with that, it causes people to spend more money than we ever have before in world history. So today we want to unpack what economics look like in a globalized culture. But we have to remember that globalized culture comes out of an era in which we had two warring factions when it comes to the economy.
The Cold War was a fight over ideologies, and this clash of titans between capitalism and communism comes to define an entire era.
Remember, capitalism is all about private freedom and the free market, and what I do with my money is my business. I can do whatever I want. So if I want to invest in a fleet of jet skis, nobody's stopping me. Or if I want to start a new soup kitchen and a restaurant based all around soup, I can do that if I want to. Yet in communism or socialism, I don't have that freedom. Because of the extreme taxation and government involvement, I can't actually do that. No soup for you! It's two very differing ideologies, and as we know in the Cold War, if there truly was a winner, it was democracy and capitalism, not communism and socialism. So we're living in a world after the Cold War that is starting to turn its head more towards capitalist tendencies.
Today we want to unpack three different ways in which economics have changed within the global age. The first is our responses to the Cold War. Many states are going to change the way in which they go about their economies, and that exact result is capitalism, and more capitalism because of the failures of the Soviet Union and the successes of capitalist states during the Cold War. We'll also take a look at the production in economies and the fact that many states have changed what they produce and how they produce it. And finally, we'll take a look at transnational businesses. The fact that businesses are now doing their business globally is going to be way different than what we saw in the past.
If there was a winner during the Cold War, it was probably the United States and its democratic and capitalist ideology, things that will end up spreading throughout the rest of the world. The United States truly believes that it is a leader worldwide, and with that it tries to spread many of its ideas, one of those being capitalism.
By the end of the Cold War, Ronald Reagan's policy of Reaganomics and Margaret Thatcher's policy of Thatcherism were two competing capitalist ideas that came to dominate worldwide economics. When Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980, he inherited a country that was economically struggling with the energy crisis under the presidency of Jimmy Carter. So his response was trying to find ways to stimulate the economy. And Reagan believed in increased government spending. When the government spends and it wins, you spend and you win. That was his belief, to try to generate spending throughout the entire country. This was believed to be called trickle-down economics. And the thought was that if Reagan could cut taxes from the upper classes, that eventually this would all trickle down to the lower classes. So by creating a free market in which business and spending was encouraged, America would thrive in this new capitalist state.
Now, class, this is also known as something OO economics. Anyone? Voodoo economics. If you didn't get that last joke, you clearly haven't seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So right now, stop the video, seriously, do it, and watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'll be back, don't worry. Come on back later once you've seen the movie.
This is often considered to be called voodoo economics because it is kind of a risk. By eliminating taxes, you eliminate one of the government's biggest sources of income. But Reagan believed that through advanced military and scientific spending, he could put the U.S. in a spot where it was thriving economically because of all the business that was going on within its borders. Across the pond in Great Britain, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was running her own version of capitalism that was very similar to Reaganomics, but a little bit different. It's often known as Thatcherism, and it's often compared to monetarism, which is basically a government-aided form of capitalism in which the government continues to spend and put money into the public to fund overall economic growth. And through intense spending targets, it could be very easily manipulated in a way that promoted growth and not decrease. Overall, Thatcher believed in low taxes, but not necessarily not having taxes. She believed that taxation was very necessary for overall economic growth. So just like Reagan, the British believed in increasing government spending to overall create a capitalist state.
The United States and Great Britain set the tone for the rest of the world after the Cold War. They proved that capitalism was a path to quick and easy financial gain for an overall state. And it also grants opportunities to all aspects of society, something that socialism and communism weren't actually doing. So it's easy to see that why, after the Cold War, capitalism really starts to spread.
Capitalist tendencies even spread to China under Mao's successor Deng, who introduced a more moderate economy than China had had during its communist times.
Ah, dang it, said any supporter of Mao or communist China.
Deng's use of the free market allowed China to recover after years of communist nature, and it allowed for free businesses to begin to produce in China and better the economy overall. On top of that, Deng shifted more to free peasant farming instead of the collectivization that China tried to model itself off of Russia and use, and it allowed for peasants to actually own their land and have some variety in what goods they produce. And foreign companies were finally allowed into China, which created a new form of transnational business and allowed for a global economy to thrive in China. Yet many question why, as Deng made so many economic changes, why he didn't make political changes and social changes, as China still remained a limited area of free speech and free thought.
Yet oftentimes the U.S. actually forced its capitalist tendencies onto developing nations. Take, for example, Chile, where our good old friends, the Dirty Tricks boys, the CIA, got involved and backed a coup that put Augusto Pinochet in charge. Remember, yeah, that's the guy who pushed guys out of his helicopter and used dramatic force to maintain his power. The U.S. backed him in order to make sure that Chile remained capitalist.
Pinochet in Chile definitely brought Chile into the free market, and it brought privately owned businesses through American-educated economists who actually ran the economy on behalf of Pinochet. And this overall reduced poverty and brought Chile into the top echelon of economies worldwide.
The capitalist influence of the United States worldwide, whether justified or not, has left a clear footprint in the entire world, with a world that has mainly turned to capitalism. And as the United States gets more involved in this globalized culture, we see many nations that change the way their economies function. Take, for example, Japan, who after World War II was occupied by the United States, took steps to become a more industrialized state, and a state that mirrored the steps the United States had taken to become extremely profitable worldwide.
Asian countries, including Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and even China itself, will grow rapidly in population and production, earning the names Asian tigers. And they'll be deeply rooted in imperialism, but in ways that produce textiles, clothing, and other consumer goods to places worldwide. The same will happen in Latin and South America, who capitalize on export economies, including silver, sugar, and other precious metals, as well as textiles, finished goods, and even oil in the Gulf of Mexico.
However, the biggest change in economies worldwide is the increase in knowledge economies, economies that are no longer based on just specific resources and finished goods, rather on electronics and new technological developments that really are reflections of the growth of the human mind. In a knowledge economy, countries rely on specialized skills and knowledge that has been gained by the individuals there. This includes technological companies, something like Apple or Google, or maybe even Nintendo in Japan. Japan is very famous for being a knowledge economy. Finland has another knowledge economy, and it's something that the United States is currently taking steps towards as we continue to value STEM in our academics. A third area of change, economically speaking, after the Cold War and a globalized culture, again, is the use of transnational businesses between different countries, and the fact that private businesses are now doing business overseas.
Since 1945, the UN has created a cooperative attitude amongst countries around the world, especially in regards to the economy. One example of this is the IMF, or International Monetary Fund.
Wait, we're not talking about the IMF from Mission Impossible and Ethan Hunt? Dang it!
This existed to facilitate trade, promote employment and economic growth, and eliminate poverty worldwide. It featured a payment and loan system that allowed for countries to contribute to and take from when needed, such as the bailout of Greece in 2010. This also led to the development of the World Bank, which provided loans and deposit and investment opportunities for nations worldwide. Trade deals between different countries, including NAFTA, which was an alliance between the US, Mexico, and Canada, made trade unregulated and easier for different countries to participate.
This has been the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals, maybe ever. It's literally the worst. They're great guys, but I think the trade deal is terrible.
The EU, or European Union, is another example of a trade agreement which united Europe under one trade union and included the use of the euro, but this has begun to crumble in recent years after Great Britain left in Brexit.
These new trade organizations and movements and trade agreements throughout the world have made it easier for businesses to do business worldwide and make profits off of new markets. That's why we see the rise of transnational companies, companies that aren't necessarily rooted in one country. They sell products worldwide.
Nestle, for example, was a Swiss chocolate company that has now boomed into a multinational food and drink processing conglomerate that worldwide produces so many different goods that you recognize and purchase on a regular basis. Or Nissan, a car company from Japan that has produced so many cars worldwide, as one of the world's largest automotive producers, including the official car of Mr. Cain, Rogue One.
So as a result of the Cold War, capitalist tendencies have certainly spread worldwide, maybe even to some places that we never thought capitalism would get to. But really at the heart of this capitalist spread is this bigger idea of globalization and the fact that humans have always been yearning for connection. And we now live in a day and age in which there's more connection throughout the world than there ever has been. And with that, we can really see humans working together for economic gain and for economic good. Many argue that this is the best time to be alive because of the economic success that is afforded for the world and everyone in it. However, studies of the spread of capitalism and globalization always reflect one thing about humans, and that's the fact that we are by nature extremely greedy. We really look out for ourselves, right? Capitalism is all about my money. Again, if I want to buy a fleet of jet skis, I have the power to do that, yet I'm going to stop at nothing to make sure I get that. And that's what businesses are really looking for. It's not necessarily for the good of mankind worldwide. It's more of the good of this man right here. And that's something we can never forget. Throughout world history, people are always after their own selfish gain. It's a reflection of who we are as humans. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.